Detailed paragraph, extracellular fields as a component of the biofield. Extracellular fields represent the electrical potentials generated by neuronal activity, and they form one of the most rigorously measurable layers of what broader traditions refer to as the human biofield. These fields arise from ionic currents flowing across neuronal membranes, especially during synaptic transmission, and they propagate through the conductive extracellular matrix to create coherent electrical patterns detectable at the scalp as EEG, or at the skin surface as local field potentials. In biophysical terms, these extracellular fields are part of the body's endogenous electromagnetic environment, which also includes the heart's electrical field, the magnetic fields generated by ionic currents detectable with MEG, and the infrared radiation emitted by metabolic heat. When people speak of a biofield, they are referring to the integrated sum of these electromagnetic, thermal, and biochemical emissions. Thus, extracellular fields are not metaphysical abstractions, but one scientifically validated layer of the body's multimodal field system. They represent the brain's contribution to the biofield, interacting continuously with cardiac fields, muscular potentials, skin conductance, and the body's thermal and photonic emissions. In this sense, the biofield is the macroscopic expression of countless microscopic electrical events, with extracellular fields serving as one of its most structured and information-rich components. Puzzle piece in other words. Extracellular fields equals the brain's electrical contribution to the biofield. The biofield equals the total energetic signature of the organism, including brain electrical fields, heart electrical fields, magnetic fields from ionic currents, thermal infrared radiation, biophoton emission, skin conductance and electrodermal activity, chemical fields, VOCs, ions, sweat evaporation. Extracellular fields are one slice of this larger system, but a crucial one, because they encode cognition, perception, and neural synchrony. Why this matters? If you're exploring mind-body interaction, meditation effects, interpersonal synchrony, energy medicine, ecological or Buddhist models of interdependence, then extracellular fields give you the scientific anchor for how the nervous system radiates information into the environment. They are the neural substrate of the biofield. How the heart and thought create fields. Both the heart and the brain generate measurable electromagnetic fields through the movement of charged ions across cell membranes, and these fields extend beyond the body to form major components of the human biofield. The heart produces the strongest field in the body because every heartbeat is driven by coordinated waves of depolarization across millions of cardiac cells, creating a large electrical dipole that radiates outward and can be detected several feet away with sensitive instruments. The brain generates its own fields through the synchronized activity of neuronal populations. When thoughts arise, they are instantiated as patterns of synaptic currents and oscillatory rhythms, and these ionic flows create extracellular electric fields that propagate through the conductive tissues of the skull and skin. When many neurons fire in synchrony, such as during focused attention, meditation, or emotional arousal, the resulting fields become stronger and more coherent, contributing to the brain's electromagnetic signature. Together, the heart's rhythmic electrical pulses and the brain's oscillatory neural currents form overlapping electromagnetic layers that interact with thermal radiation, magnetic flux, and biochemical emissions from the skin. In this way, thought and heart activity are not abstract metaphors but literal biophysical processes that generate structured fields, which then merge into the larger, dynamic system referred to as the human biofield. The human biofield becomes stronger and more coherent when the body's major oscillatory systems, the heart rhythm, breathing cycle, neural oscillations, and autonomic nervous system, enter a state of physiological synchrony known as coherence. This occurs when slow, diaphragmatic breathing stabilizes vagal tone, allowing the heart's electrical rhythm to shift into a smooth, sine wave-like pattern that entrains neural circuits in the brainstem, limbic system, and cortex. As the heart's electromagnetic field becomes more ordered, cortical networks begin to synchronize through increased alpha and theta oscillations, reducing neural noise and producing more stable extracellular fields. At the same time, relaxed but attentive states reduce sympathetic activation, lowering muscular microtension and electrodermal fluctuations, which further stabilizes the body's electromagnetic output. Because the heart generates the largest measurable field in the body, its coherence acts as a pacemaker for the rest of the system, allowing respiration, neural rhythms, and emotional states to align into a unified oscillatory pattern. This alignment does not create new energy, but increases the signal-to-noise ratio of the body's existing electromagnetic emissions, making the biofield more coherent, stable, and physiologically efficient. Signal-to-noise ratio refers to the balance between meaningful, organized physiological activity and the background chaos that naturally exists in the body's electrical and biochemical systems. In the brain, the signal is produced when large groups of neurons fire in synchronized rhythms that encode thoughts, attention, and emotional states, while the noise comes from random, unsynchronized firing that adds interference and reduces clarity. The same principle applies. Signal-to-noise ratio refers to the balance between meaningful, organized physiological activity and the background chaos that naturally exists in the body's electrical and biochemical systems. In the brain, the signal is produced when large groups of neurons fire in synchronized rhythms that encode thoughts, attention, and emotional states, while the noise comes from random, unsynchronized firing that adds interference and reduces clarity. The same signal-to-noise ratio refers to the balance between meaningful, organized physiological activity and the background chaos that naturally exists in the body's electrical and biochemical systems. In the brain, the signal is produced when large groups of neurons fire in synchronized rhythms that encode thoughts, attention, and emotional states, while the noise comes from random, unsynchronized firing that adds interference and reduces clarity. The same principle applies to the heart. A smooth, coherent heart rhythm represents a strong signal, whereas erratic, stress-driven fluctuations introduce noise. When the nervous system is regulated, through calm breathing, emotional stability, or focused attention, the signal becomes stronger and the noise decreases, allowing the body's electromagnetic patterns to become more coherent and efficient. In this sense, a high signal-to-noise ratio means the body is operating in a state of internal alignment, where its electrical, magnetic, and physiological rhythms reinforce one another rather than compete, creating a clearer and more stable biofield. In today's digital world, creating coherent physiological states requires deliberately counteracting the constant fragmentation imposed by screens, notifications, and cognitive overload. The most reliable way to do this is by stabilizing the body's core oscillatory systems, breathing, heart rhythm, and neural activity, through practices that restore parasympathetic dominance and reduce sensory noise. Slow, diaphragmatic breathing at a steady rhythm, typically around 5 to 6 breaths per minute, entrains the vagus nerve and shifts the heart into a smooth, sine wave-like pattern known as heart rate coherence, which in turn synchronizes neural circuits involved in attention, emotional regulation, and executive function. Reducing digital multitasking, minimizing rapid context switching, and creating intentional, single-task windows lowers cortical noise and allows neural oscillations to settle into more stable alpha and theta rhythms. Brief periods of stillness, posture alignment, and visual downregulation, e.g., looking at distant objects instead of screens, further reduce sympathetic activation and muscular microtension, which stabilizes electrodermal activity and improves the clarity of the body's electromagnetic output. These steps do not create new energy but increase the signal-to-noise ratio of the body's existing electrical and physiological patterns, allowing the heart, brain, and autonomic nervous system to operate in synchrony despite the chaotic demands of modern digital life. Creating a single, low-noise state in today's overstimulated environment requires reducing the number of competing internal processes so the body's major rhythms can align into one coherent pattern. The most reliable way to do this is by stabilizing the autonomic nervous system through slow, rhythmic breathing, which immediately reduces sympathetic activation and quiets the background static created by stress, multitasking, and digital overload. When breathing slows, the heart's rhythm becomes smoother and more predictable, and this coherent cardiac pattern begins to entrain neural circuits involved in attention, emotion, and executive control. At the same time, eliminating rapid context switching, closing extra tabs, silencing notifications, and focusing on a single task, reduces cortical noise, and allows brain oscillations to settle into more stable alpha and theta rhythms. Posture also matters. A relaxed but upright position reduces muscular microtension, which lowers electrodermal noise and stabilizes the body's electrical environment. Together, these steps create a physiological condition where the heart, breath, and brain operate in synchrony, producing a strong, unified internal signal with minimal interference. This is the biophysical foundation of clarity, presence, and coherence in a digital world designed to fragment attention. Methods for improvement, a theoretical perspective. I am using AI to formulate my thoughts into more scientific terminology for my understanding, and also to find correlations to simplify current theory, or for methods and ways to examine my own encounters. As I am driven to find my own curiosities, and I don't feel the scientific or any other governing body will in detail lay out their plans or hypotheses, so I made my own based on experience. They claim experience is the best teacher, but it's nothing if you don't put it all together and grow. Or in Old English, wax. The limitations in this and some of my other posts are I am holding key words back as I am using AI to make this more logical for others that may be interested. Other than that, you are getting a detailed outline for the most part of my encounters and the only current methods used to study this phenomenon, and the methods in which this new/old branch of science will be created and expanded on by brighter minds. 1. Strengthening top-down control networks. Top-down control refers to the brain's ability to regulate perception, attention, and behavior through coordinated activity in the prefrontal cortex, PFC, and its connections to sensory and subcortical regions. When these networks are engaged, they increase the signal-to-noise ratio by selectively amplifying task-relevant neural firing while suppressing irrelevant or distracting inputs. Neurophysiologically, this is expressed as increased gamma-band synchrony between the PFC and parietal cortices, along with reduced spontaneous firing in sensory regions not involved in the task. Research in cognitive neuroscience shows that tasks requiring sustained attention, working memory, or executive control reliably increase coherence across these networks, effectively quieting background neural noise. This is why deep concentration feels subjectively calm. The PFC is actively stabilizing neural rhythms and filtering out interference. Reducing physiological noise sources. Physiological noise arises from systemic factors, stress hormones, sleep deprivation, inflammation, metabolic instability, that destabilize neural firing and reduce the clarity of cortical communication. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which disrupts synaptic plasticity and weakens the hippocampus and PFC, leading to more erratic firing patterns. Sleep deprivation prevents proper synaptic pruning and glymphatic clearance, leaving excess background activity that competes with meaningful neural signals. Inflammation interferes with neurotransmitter release and slows conduction velocity, further degrading signal fidelity. When these noise sources are reduced through rest, stress reduction, or metabolic stability, the baseline neural environment becomes quieter, allowing synchronized firing patterns to emerge more clearly. In other words, lowering physiological noise is not about relaxation, but about restoring the physical conditions required for coherent neural computation. 3. Enhancing neural oscillatory coherence. Neural oscillations are rhythmic patterns of electrical activity that coordinate communication across brain regions. When oscillations are coherent, meaning their phases align across networks, the brain transmits information more efficiently, increasing the signal-to-noise ratio. Practices such as meditation, rhythmic breathing, and repetitive movement have been shown to increase coherence in alpha, theta, and gamma bands, depending on the technique. For example, breath-focused meditation increases alpha coherence in frontal and parietal regions, which stabilizes attention and reduces spontaneous neural noise. Rhythmic movement and music entrainment synchronize motor and auditory cortices, creating large-scale coherence that improves timing, prediction, and emotional regulation. Oscillatory coherence is not a metaphor, it is a measurable physical alignment of neural rhythms that sharpens perception and cognition. Increasing selective attention. Selective attention functions as a biological amplifier that increases the firing rate of neurons representing relevant information while suppressing competing signals. This selective enhancement is mediated by neuromodulators such as acetylcholine and norepinephrine, which increase the gain of task-relevant circuits and reduce background activity. In sensory cortices, attention increases gamma band synchrony and reduces spontaneous firing, effectively sharpening the brain's internal representation of the attended stimulus. This is why attention improves perceptual accuracy and reaction time. It physically increases the signal-to-noise ratio by allocating neural resources to a single target. Cognitive neuroscience research consistently shows that attention is not merely a psychological state, but a mechanistic filter that shapes the flow of information through the brain. Optimizing neurotransmitter balance. Neurotransmitters regulate the excitability, timing, and synchrony of neural networks, making them central to the brain's signal-to-noise ratio. Dopamine increases neural gain, meaning it amplifies the contrast between strong and weak signals, which enhances motivation, working memory, and goal-directed behavior. Norepinephrine increases alertness and reduces background noise by tightening the tuning curves of sensory neurons. Acetylcholine sharpens sensory precision by enhancing the signal from relevant stimuli while suppressing irrelevant ones. GABA, the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, reduces random background firing and stabilizes oscillatory rhythms. When these systems are balanced, neural communication becomes more precise and coherent. When they are dysregulated, noise increases and cognitive performance declines. This framework is widely used in computational neuroscience to model attention, learning, and decision-making. Reducing cognitive load. Cognitive load refers to the total amount of information the brain is actively processing at any given moment. When load is high, due to multitasking, environmental clutter, or excessive working memory demands, the brain's networks become saturated and noise increases. Environmental clutter. Excessive working memory demands, the brain's networks become saturated and noise increases. This happens because multiple neural circuits compete for limited attentional and metabolic resources, leading to fragmented oscillatory patterns and reduced coherence. Reducing cognitive load, by externalizing memory through notes, simplifying the environment, or focusing on one task at a time, frees neural bandwidth and allows the brain to allocate resources more efficiently. This improves the signal-to-noise ratio by enabling stronger, more synchronized firing in the circuits relevant to the task at hand. In cognitive psychology, this principle underlies theories of working memory, attention, and decision fatigue. Increasing interoceptive stability. Interoception, the brain's monitoring of internal bodily states, plays a major role in neural stability. When the body is physiologically calm, the brain receives fewer erratic signals from the heart, lungs, and viscera, reducing background noise. Slow, rhythmic breathing increases vagal tone, which stabilizes heart rhythms and synchronizes them with cortical oscillations. High heart rate variability, HRV, is associated with greater emotional regulation and improved attentional control because it reflects a flexible, well-regulated autonomic nervous system. Muscle relaxation reduces proprioceptive noise, lowering the volume of sensory input the brain must filter. Together, these factors create a quieter internal environment that supports coherent neural firing. Interoceptive stability is therefore not just a bodily state, but a foundation for cognitive clarity and emotional regulation.